I guess I was president of IAS 2004 to 2006. It was, and it was a really fun time in many ways. A lot was happening, the HIV epidemic. For IAS, it was when we moved our headquarters from Stockholm to Geneva. And I think in some ways really took a step to trying to professionalize and build a long-term institution that supported professionals in this epidemic. And so I think that was an exciting time. It was a time when lots of new resources were coming to bear. PEPFAR, the Global Fund, the real ability, and the conference that I presided over was, I think, time to deliver. And I think there was a sense that there had been all of these great policies passed, and there were a lot of promises made, but it was time to deliver, and we were getting the resources. And how do you take those promises and turn those into action? I think also, because my work had always been particularly focused on prevention, we also elevated the issues of prevention. I think during that time we added the prevention track to the scientific meeting. And we really had a big focus on how do you integrate treatment and prevention and bring that to bear. The role of women became even more of an issue during that time, and I coincided. I was the first woman president ever of IAS, and so that was an issue that I think got more attention as we started realizing the impact that HIV was having on women around the world. And I think also, as we started focusing a lot more on what was possible in the global epidemic, it also brought into the issues of development, and how did HIV and development, the focus on poverty alleviation and the issues related to that, bring that to bear. And so I think, one of the things that was exciting to me was to think about looking at this epidemic in a much more holistic way, and having that be part of our conferences, having that be part of our dialogue, and thinking about how we look at this balance of the different issues that are wrapped up in HIV at a time when there was so many more resources being mobilized, more solutions. I think around that time was when the circumcision trials were finalized, and we had that really big burst of excitement about a new prevention modality that we hadn't had before. So a lot was going on, and it was this notion of time to deliver. How do we take all of this, bring that together, and really be able to look back and say we had made a difference? I definitely think that HIV has had a huge impact well beyond the HIV/AIDS epidemic itself. And I feel good that we have made as much progress as we have on providing drugs to people, even in the remotest parts of the world, to developing new prevention technologies, to make some real strides in behavior change. But all of that has also had many positive side benefits for public health more broadly. The fact that we're building infrastructures in resource-poor settings that allow us to deliver HIV drugs means that we're developing health systems more broadly that will be able to be responsive to other diseases. The amount of training and upgrading of skills that has gone on around HIV has had a huge impact on the health field and public health particularly. Really learning how to work with communities and work with individuals around behavior change, critical for other diseases that are chronic diseases where behaviors are so much a part of it. And I think the integration between prevention and treatment that has evolved with HIV is another really important factor. And I think the fact that HIV developed a movement around a health issue like never before has also had incredible, I think, empowering effects for other diseases where people have learned to mobilize and use their voices in ways that has called attention to issues that for too long were neglected. One of the legacies of the HIV epidemic is that people of diverse background can come together, rally around an issue, and elevate that issue to a point of real action. And I remember back in the early 90s, I was heading USAID's HIV program. We had $250 million, the largest economy in the world, largest donor nation, and that was the size of our budget. We didn't even think about billions like we're talking about today. And to go from something like that type of response, anemic response, if you will, to what we have today, where we have billions of dollars focused on this issue that's not only helping HIV, but is all putting the winds in the sail for so many other issues. I think that's marvelous, and I think it shows the power of what people can do when they have passion, commitment to elevate an issue and to garner those kinds of resources. So I think that in and of itself, huge. But then when you think about the practical aspects of how we've been able to improve health systems, train health workers, engage the communities, all of the things that have been necessary to make a difference in HIV, I think it has a huge impact overall above and beyond it. And as we thought a lot more about the links between social and economic inequities and how that impacts who's most affected by HIV, it also meant we had to start thinking about some of the broader economic issues. So if women are disproportionately impacted because they don't have a voice, because they don't have economic wherewithal and need to put themselves at risk because of economic issues, then we've got to think about economics if we're going to have an impact on women's ability to protect themselves from HIV. So it meant that as we thought more about it and thought about what were the underlying reasons for people's risk for HIV, it meant we also had to think about broader social and economic issues as well. Science in general in HIV, I think, had to become more focused and more practical. And so, people needed solutions. And I think in some ways it has helped to focus science in a way that was much more outcome driven, and to take some risk and to look at how do you do clinical trials, for instance, in ways that might produce evidence quicker than might have been the case otherwise. And in doing a lot of the kinds of trials I've been involved in, particularly some of the prevention trials, it's meant really testing our sense of ethics and what are our rights and responsibility in the context of trials. But I think it's an exciting time, perhaps somewhat more on the prevention than the treatment side. I think treatment, we've got some really, really good solutions, and now a lot of it is around delivery. And to continue to make treatment more affordable, simpler, and more resistant to resistance, so that we can have relatively inexpensive regimens that work even when people develop resistance. And I think with that, the ability to have treatment that can influence prevention is a huge step in, it's a huge progress and gives us a lot more tools. On the other hand, I think there have been real prevention breakthroughs, but we still have ways to go. Obviously, a vaccine is going to be the ultimate. I think the work in vaccine development has had its ups and downs and highs and lows, but the fact that we are still focused on making sure that we are able to have a safe and effective vaccine is encouraging. And in the meantime, treatment for prevention, pre-exposure prophylaxis, circumcision, and still the work towards a microbicide, I think all of those things are incredibly encouraging. I think that IAS has kept the spirit of this epidemic alive, and I think that it has increasingly built a broader coalition of professionals. It started very much as primarily an organization of scientists and physicians. It has grown from that to be much more inclusive and bring different voices and build a sense of the professionals working on HIV. And I think as it has become more inclusive as an organization, it's both changed the nature of the organization, but it's also changed the dialogue and changed the people who are part of it. And so I think for the scientists who might have initially felt more comfortable only being with scientists, they have stretched and learned to understand those who might be more community focused and have a very different way of addressing this. For the activist or somebody who's coming from much more of a community approach, they've learned to understand the scientists. And I think in that way, we've learned to build a bridge between people working on HIV who consider themselves really part of this overall movement, to build a bridge and build some cohesion that I think has been really important as we have moved ahead. And as HIV doesn't have perhaps the same center stage in many ways, it's continued to keep a group of people focused and mobilized on this issue. As HIV becomes more integrated broadly into health and development issues, but still keeping that core focus of remembering that our work is not done. So I think IAS has contributed and continues to contribute to making sure that we do keep this coalition moving along around this and do it in a way that is somewhat independent from some of our more official organs.